and welcome back to Teppou Republic. On the last episode we saw Takahisa facing a combined Okayama-Hiroshima army facing one at a time on a dreary battlefield. He managed to destroy both of them, although taking some casualties among his own men, which allowed him to go and take Okayama's castle in Bizen. Back in Setsu, he managed to overpower a Hiroshima and a Satsuma army, finally clearing up all of the invading armies in that area. We similarly overpowered the castle at Uzen, combining 3 generals with their elite armies to destroy the Yonezawa defenders and leaving us enough men to easily continue on to attack more shogunate areas. Kunimitsu began a siege of Hoki. He didn't have enough power to go into an assault, so he's going to try and siege them out and wait for the situation to come into his advantage. I deployed naval forces, hoping to go around towards Kii and destroy all of the Imperial fleets that have been bombarding me for over a year now. Then Tananao rushed forward into Shogunate territory and captured Ugo from under the noses of the Sendai shogunal vanguard, who were too slow to do anything about it. Finally, I moved an army to attack Awaji Island. That army had no general, formerly the army of Takayuki, but it encountered a Takasuki army standing in the way. It's not very big, but it is powerful. We're about to see the fight to wipe them out and then move on. Now, like many, my mind has turned to victory. For many of you, your minds have been on nothing else, but when you see the uncertainties of war up close, it is hard to say for sure what will happen. But the Imperials have spent their hidden cards and failed. The Shogunals have no will or reason to resist us any further. It is likely that when the last Shogunate sword is sheathed, or falls from a dying grasp, the remaining regions will surrender, knowing that our strength on the remaining fronts will redouble with haste. The uncertainties of war may preclude many sureties, but that this is the future for our nation is obvious even to a wizened man such as myself. These content words of victory come with many new questions, many new challenges to face. You will all be wondering what will become of myself and my military council, and of the military mandate that steals from you, the people's true leaders, the power to decide how our shared property is used. Well, you will no doubt be relieved to hear that anyone and everyone who I or my family through its feudal legacy rose to power will no longer have military command, and the mandate will be removed entirely. Our future security will be in the hands of elected individuals, perhaps even some of you here today. But I ask that we do not entirely ignore the achievements of our incumbent commanders just for the sake of principle. The personal sacrifices made by those I command are deserving of some form of special compensation. So I say this: let all members of my military council, if they so wish, be permitted to ascend to a seat in the Kokai for their chosen municipality without election. This will be a one-time event, a testament to the work these men have done, a gesture to show how, although all are permitted to rule their nation if they are fit, these men have already proven themselves to be far above the common candidate. You are no doubt shocked to hear me turn around on a principle like this. But this war is not just politics and principles, it is people who have to be treated in accordance with their contribution to our society, people to whom we owe more than a vote on national policy can ever cover. So I ask you all to grant me this request, my final request as an executor, so that I may feel my own debt to these heroic men discharged. Taking up a position on a small hill, the Sioux invasion force of Awaji prepares to face the Takasuki army arrayed before them, beginning the battle as usual with a bombardment from their artillery shells. The enemy are quite far away and well covered, but we do manage to get a few hits on them. You can see they're actually just standing there because they want to fire back at me with their artillery. However, their artillery guns were out of range and their front line was so far forwards that mine were in range, meaning they're in a bit of a pickle really. They decided to move their whole formation into the trees on the hillside, but that slow movement is going to leave them vulnerable because I can just keep firing at them whilst they take these movements. I think what they want to do, the AI wants to do, is to move its guns forward to fire at me, and that's why they're waiting all of their infantry within range of my artillery, because they think we're going to have an artillery battle. And while they're setting up, I'm just going to blast away at the lines of men that are in range. I'm using the shrapnel here, which is particularly effective against these regiments which are running sideways and thus presenting their flank to me, because the shrapnel explodes in a cone shape, meaning if it has a nice long line to rip through, it will rip through them. You can see we leave lines of bodies behind as the enemy try to reform. Now, after a while, they decided they weren't going to hang around like this and actually advance on me properly to engage in a line battle, but they're going to be taking damage the entire time. My artillery guns pound them, and especially once they come away from the forested hill, they're very exposed and they're going to take a lot of fire. So my men will now just wait for the enemy to come into range to simply fire off a few volleys at the survivors. The balance bar is already becoming quite in our favour. It's very in our favour, as you can see, when the battle actually starts properly. Our men unload volleys on the enemy's infantry. The enemy infantry is actually better than ours technically, but we have the high ground. We have two lines of fire. We have sharpshooters supporting us, and here in the centre we have US Marines who are better than anything the enemy can field. The enemy's numbers are already so depleted from the artillery that they'll only fire a couple of volleys before routing, while our men are much more steadfast even without a general. So it didn't last too long. The enemy did attempt a melee attack as well, a melee charge up the hill, but of course that didn't work. So soon all of their forces were in full retreat. A failed cavalry charge was done as well. It didn't get anywhere near our lines though. So they got out of there. I had to send my own cavalry to run down the enemy's artillery, which still hadn't begun firing at me. They're still moving them forwards. So they really didn't use the artillery support they could have had. They had 2 squads of parrot guns, I had 3, so it wasn't all that different, but overall the enemy wasted their chance. We destroyed them, and my cavalry wiped out the parrot guns as the enemy's main army was running off the field, being chased by my own artillery. So a devastating defeat for the Takasuki. This means that the Sioux army here can now move on the castle at Awaji without encountering any more resistance, unless they can very quickly build another army, or if they did have another army and just didn't decide to send it out for this battle, which I doubt. So an important result. See here from the battle results, we actually captured one of those 2 squads of parrot guns, so we're now getting even more powerful in terms of artillery in this group, which will help if we have to go into a siege battle at the castle, of course. So I'm going to try and move towards the castle. These guys don't have much movement range, so it's going to take a while to actually get there. Next turn I may be able to begin a siege if nothing else causes me to be delayed. We'll see how that goes later on. Now back over in Setsu, I've got all those armies hanging around, and it's finally time to start moving them out so we can put some pressure on the Imperials. First, I move one army up to support Takayuki in attacking an Okayama force which is stuck into Harima. They run away as expected, but I decided I would finish them off because I'm not in an absolutely huge rush. I have so many armies that I can spare 2 armies to go and chase down this half stack, whilst I'll have 2 more armies moving up towards the front. So Takayuki moves in to a reinforcement position, as does the original army, but then he takes his guards and some cavalry to initiate a battle, meaning both armies will get drawn in. The balance bar is super far in our favour, and we wipe out this Okayama invasion. This really is the final straw for clearing up Setsu and Harima area in general from Imperial forces. All of their big invasions have now been defeated, and I don't think they're going to stage any more, because now that we've advanced the front a little bit, they're probably going to be more focused on Bizen and Awaji as places to attack. So I think the people of Harima and Setsu might have finally seen the end to this war, at least if they're very lucky. Now over in Mimisaka, Takahisa has an opportunity to attack this Hiroshima army. It snuck past him in Bizen and moved north. Takahisa had moved up to defeat a different Hiroshima army, and now this one has appeared right next to him, so it's a chance to attack. The battle is in our favour. The enemy has some very low quality infantry. Overall, I'm very confident of victory in this battle. We've won many similar ones before, so I'll just be showing highlights. Let's go and wipe them out. Who have they left to send against us? The histories of their defeat have already begun to be written. They know how the laws of heaven will resolve their plight. It's only these men of blind loyalty, those who feel like the only end to their part in this war is death, who will still fight me. Fight the Sioux, that is. I know exactly how they feel. It is how I was told I must feel when fighting for my honor-pledged cause. But there's something about the spirit of the new age that makes that seem like childish folly, even though it might be more righteous a way than anything we teach our children today. Takehisa sets up his army to attack the Hiroshima. I had to advance forward a bit, which is why the artillery aren't set up yet. So I've moved up and are now setting them up in quite an ideal position. A position where they just have range on the front of the enemy's line. We're only just able to hit them, which means the enemy's artillery guns probably can't fire back at us. These wooden cannons, of course, definitely can't with their low range. The enemy also have howitzers, I believe, which are about equivalent in range to the Paraguns. I can use the Paragon's special abilities to then extend their range slightly for a temporary period of time, meaning I can fire at whatever I want for a little bit. So I fire shrapnel shot towards the enemy's formation, tearing them apart and doing heavy damage. They don't enjoy that, of course, and these shrapnel shots are going to tempt them to start moving forwards towards me because they'll realize they have this range disadvantage. So their commander gives the order and they start moving towards me, but of course while they're moving they're going to take more damage from the artillery, especially because again they're moving their own artillery and not firing back at me. These tightly formed up Yari attendants take a direct hit, doing massive damage. They're also moving more slowly than they could be if they loosened up their formation there, so they're not doing themselves any favours. So they're moving well into range for me. I can fire at them, destroy their artillery, give them no chance to fight back. Eventually they have no choice but to advance towards me, walking very slowly across the battlefield whilst I bombard them. They walk so slowly that I get another round of shrapnel shot off before they even get close to the line, doing devastating damage. You can see now that all of these regiments are depleted, some of them really depleted. They're on the verge of routing even, so there probably isn't going to be much of a fight once they actually arrive at my position. And sure enough, they get here. Takehisa's men launch a volley towards them and immediately the enemy are in trouble. The balance bar already very far in our favour after just a couple of volleys. They do have superior infantry to me again, but they have them in inferior numbers, so although they'll get some shots off of me and deal a couple of casualties, overall nothing bad is going to happen to our men. The enemy force is in huge trouble. After just a couple of minutes of this engagement, the enemy are going to have to fall back. They did try a melee charge as well, which of course completely failed. Their melee units had been really depleted before they arrived, so they didn't get anywhere close. So the enemy go into full retreat, rushing back. I had to send cavalry to defeat their wooden cannons right at the back of the map as well, but those wooden cannons actually decided to rout before my cavalry arrived, which was a quite convenient thing, which very rarely happens. Here you can see their howitzers. They moved their howitzers up really close to my line, but never used them. Again, the AI has failed to take any action with its artillery to counter mine, or to generally damage my army using the artillery, one of its most powerful units. So we see another decisive defeat for the enemy and a decisive victory for Takehisa. So that's another Hiroshima invasion force crushed. Hopefully there won't be any more, because Takehisa has to deal with the Tsuano invasion force coming from the west. We managed to capture the enemy's unused artillery, which may or may not turn out to be useful, and we got a statue for that battle. Apparently it was that important. Didn't seem like a particularly big one to me, but still, this means the Hiroshima force in the area is gone. I can move those wooden cannons to garrison either of the castles. I move them towards Mimisaka, being more under threat, and Takehisa too has to make a similar move. You can see the Tsuano armies there on the left hand side of the screen. They've got 1.5 stacks who are moving south. We don't know where they're going, but I'm going to play it safe and assume they're going to attack Mimisaka for now. The Satsuma now land a force in Kawachi during the end turn sequence. Very inconvenient, so it turns out I was wrong about that being the end of the invasions to that area. We're going to have to do something about that, and I think Kawachi could be in trouble. The Sendai Shogunal Vanguard over in the east start falling back in the face of our various advances, so that's good news. On the all-important Tsuano turn, those armies do move into Mimisaka, so they could be going to attack, they could be just moving through. Either way, we'll have to defend the castle. The Seido army that landed previously is moving down towards Echigo still. I've still got forces there, so I'm not worried about that at the moment. Now I can use the Zoom 2 command to tell me that the invasion force is there, but actually I can't see the Satsuma army. We can assume though that it is actually there and it could attack Kawachi this turn, and Kawachi of course is very lightly defended. So I started moving some forces near the castle so that if it was taken I could immediately go and besiege them inside, if they didn't leave immediately, that is. So I had some guys over in Iga, a volunteer force from fighting rebels previously, who could come to help, and I have forces from Setsu who are currently regenerating, the most healthy of which can be put together to go and help out if needs be. Now over in Mimisaka, the Tsuano army also has disappeared, very inconvenient. There is nowhere it can hide there, so I don't know how it's managed it, but at least we know where it is because we saw it moving. So Takehisa can move up nearby. The question is whether it's going to move north towards Inaba province or whether it's going to attack this castle. For now I'm going to assume it is going to this castle in particular, so Takehisa's going to move his forces which are most suited to a castle defense inside. The more useless ones will wait outside as reinforcements. Hopefully the enemy won't attack them. If they're interested in taking the castle, they probably won't, because they'll go for the castle first and foremost. Down in Awaji, my forces continue to advance, but actually there's a Hiroshima army randomly standing in the way. I push them out of the way, but then can't reach the castle itself, so it will have to wait until next turn to start a siege of Awaji. You can see the garrison inside is pretty big, so there may even be a hard fight to take that particular fortification. Next, the nearby fleets led by Murdoch are going to come over and start engaging with all of these Imperial battle groups. We need to finally clear up this area, stop Kii being continually bombarded so it can finally get back to a state of peace and a state of economic usefulness for me. Plus I want to free up all these shipping lanes so the enemy will stop landing troops here and I can get my trade going again, because my trade routes here are in a little bit of a state. Now the enemy are going to have all of their fleets reinforce each other because they're nearby, but that's not a problem. In many ways it makes it easier. I can face all of these enemies at once and hopefully triumph over all in one battle that will clear up the area entirely. My leading attack group under Murdoch Carter has an ironclad leading the way, plus we have some armoured ships, basically faux ironclads, Japanese ships that are emplated with metal armour to make them as powerful as ironclads in battle. So I'm hoping this will allow me to easily triumph over this large number of Imperial wooden ships and allow me to move on to free up the area, as is my strategic objective. Having been raiding for 3 weeks already, our supplies were getting dangerously low when the message to advance to the Awaji Strait arrived. Normally, getting combat orders after a long period of continuous action like this would leave the men hopeless, but every one of them was almost desperate to get a chance to test our power against the murderers of the late Western Fleet. This was true most of all for our commander, an American by the name of Carter, who had apparently known Compton personally some years prior and joined the Sioux Navy without pay to see his comrade avenged. Now the replay for this battle was completely corrupt, but luckily I had a save I could go back to show you live what exactly happened. You can see the enemy actually deployed onto the map right next to where I deployed, and this happened in the replay too, coming in by surprise from behind my deployment zone, but because I'd set up in a line, my guys were immediately able to start firing on the enemy as they came in. And because the enemy are arranged really close together like this, they can't turn their ships to face their broadsides towards me. So to begin with, they're just going to take the fire, and these ships are already beginning to surrender. The close range explosive shot can do tons of damage, especially because I've put all these ships onto quick reload mode. So we're going to totally bombard them with accurate close range shots. I need to slightly adjust them here because some of them aren't actually firing at the enemy. I want to make the firepower we're using as effective as possible. This ship on the end actually taking a fair bit of damage from a little bit of enemy return fire there. Overall though, these enemy groups are in trouble. Some of them are already burning and sinking, the rest will soon be joining them. Now right on the other side of the map, the same thing happened for me. My reinforcements came in behind the enemy's deployment zone. Now in the real battle there were two enemy ships here firing at me much in the same way that I'm firing at the enemy on the other side of this battlefield. But luckily here there's only one. It's still the better of the two, the frigate, so I'm just adjusting my ships to go and attack them. Now these reinforcements look like they're just about wiped out, taking merciless close range explosive fire. The crew of this particular fleet is going to take complete revenge for the loss of their previous crewmen in arms. These guys are going right down. Even the ships that are on fire and surrendered are still taking a pounding from the explosive shot. We're not going to leave anything alive in that huge flaming wreck. So with them defeated, it's now on to finish off the rest of the ships. You can see the balance bar is already really far in our favour, so it should be child's play for our remaining corvettes to destroy the enemy's few ships. They are firing back at us, doing a little bit of damage, but we have many armour-plated ships and extra firepower to destroy them with. On the other side though, you can see that my corvettes fighting the enemy's frigate are actually suffering a bit of damage. Two of them are about to rout because the enemy frigate is so much stronger than them that even though we have the enemy surrounded and are firing at them with explosives at close range doing heavy damage, they're doing massive damage to me, just bombarding me with standard shot, destroying my hulls because they have so many more guns and increased accuracy compared to me. But overall, we do manage to defeat this frigate, losing only one of our own ships. This one routs and begins to sink as it routs. And because when they're routing you can't tell them to repair, that means it will just gradually sail away, sinking all the way. The crew will refuse to repair it until they get their nerves back, which is unfortunate for them. So there goes the final enemy ship. You can see in the background the burning wreckage of their comrades and my own ships closing in on them. Overall, the enemy were completely routed in this short engagement. The ship that was sinking actually came back from routing, funnily enough, and I told them to repair it, but it's a little bit too late. You can see the front's already starting to go underwater. There's going to be no hope for these guys. Unfortunate, but actually in the real battle, we didn't lose them, so this is just a reenactment, so that's all okay. It's a decisive victory for the newly constructed Sioux fleet, completely wiping out the Imperial fleet. There are still a few more Imperial ships we'll have to deal with, but they're not going to be a problem. That was the bulk of the enemy's number in this area. Wiped out because of the convenient deployment zone most of all. A very quick battle, a very chaotic one, and one where our powerful new ships definitely proved themselves in combat. So now let's go back and see the real results. They're pretty similar. We didn't lose any ships this time, as you can see, but it actually says here some of our ships took massive damage to their hulls, which wasn't true, and you'll see when we go back to selecting them on the campaign map that it's not indicated there either. So I think these battle results might be slightly messed up in some way, perhaps something to do with the reason the replay ended up being so corrupted. Anyway, so those enemy battle groups are sinking to the bottom. The Hiroshima one, the one that we engaged initially, actually escaped with a few of its crew intact. So they're going to rush off, but not really pose a very big threat anymore because their ship's on the verge of destruction and most of its guns will be destroyed, would have been destroyed, during the battle. So when I select my fleets here, you can see some of them have taken some damage, nothing like the critical damage that was indicated in those battle results. So that means it's safe for me to continue on and attack the remaining enemy ships. The Satsuma have an ironclad sitting on the shore there. That's the ironclad that delivered that landing force they just brought over, but it shouldn't be too much threat. And clearing up those fleets means I can now start actually repairing Kii province. I'm going to repair the ones closest to the area I just cleared up first, and as I clear up more of these zones, I'll start repairing everything else once I'm confident the enemy aren't going to come straight back and just destroy it. So I'm going into battle with the enemy's ironclad, sending my own ironclad to lead the attack. It's just that single ship plus a reinforcement ship from nearby. The enemy's ironclad wasn't very good either. It was a Japanese ironclad one that we've seen before and defeated before, and duly it is sunk, meaning this trade route and this area in general is totally clear of enemy forces. I can repair this dock, and then use that dock to repair all of the damage done to these ships. So I'll need to send them in. It'll take a turn before I can actually start the repairs because the dock has to be repaired first, and the repairs are going to be extremely expensive, but it's going to be worth it to get this fleet in tip-top condition to face any other fleets the enemy might pull into this area now that we've cleared them out. I was considering hunting down those Hiroshima escapers, but actually I decided I'd use this second group of ships to come and support my attack on Awaji. They can come and sit right next to the castle, so that when my generalless army attacks, they'll be able to provide naval support fire, which will totally decimate the castle, or if we do fight in a field battle, totally decimate the enemy's formation, so either way going to be useful to have. And now I'm going to spend a load more money repairing all of the damaged facilities in Kii and Kawachi. Finally, this area is going to get back to its economic potential, and the people of these regions might finally see some peace from the Imperial raiders. Previously, when the enemy destroyed buildings and businesses, the Sioux would pay foreigners to repair the damage or just set up shop to replace whatever was lost in its entirety. We were grateful, but it was a shame to see our towns filled with their vulgar styles and our wealth begin to flow back to their distant banks. But this time it was different. Sioux soldiers drove many of the foreign landowners away and reclaimed it as common property, directly hiring Japanese men to rebuild all we have lost according to their own plan. Finally, it gives a feeling that things are going back to how they used to be. Over on the Shogunal battlefront, it's time for Kodama to move on Iwate province. I still can't see what's in it, and as I approach I see there is a small army inside backed up by the garrison, meaning overall it's a pretty even looking engagement as the siege begins. They also have their reinforcements outside helping out, so I'm going to lay siege and start moving Yoshiuji over to help. On the way he might be able to defeat that Sendai army which is just sitting on the border there. The other question was whether Tananao could move north to attack the next Shogunate province. I eventually decided it was okay in terms of public order, and if it wasn't I'd do whatever I could to make it okay. Since speed is of the essence, I want to attack before the enemy can rebuild any of their armies. So I move up to the border. It'll probably take 1 or 2 more turns to actually get to the next settlement, but after that, that'll be all of Honshu, eastern Honshu, captured by the Sioux forces. Then I'll have to move on to attack Hokkaido using my local navies. It looks like the Sendai don't have any forces in the fog of war either, so overall that whole area is pretty safe. Now the Satsuma moved their army from Kawachi towards Kii, which is good, they're not going to attack Kawachi as I had feared. The Sendai reinforced their position at Iwate and then move around Yoshiuji. I think they're probably sneaking back to attack Ugo. The Swano switched their forces around, putting the weaker one in Mimasaka and the other one retreats. Very strange. Now in Awaji it's time for my forces to start the siege. The Hiroshima army, which had again moved to defend the castle, is easily pushed away and then we begin the siege. The balance bar slightly in our favour, but still not all that far. We do have artillery, so we can pound the castle into submission if we need to. Plus, I'm going to bring over the naval guns, who of course will make a massive difference if I do a siege assault. But for now, I'm just going to lay siege to see if they sally out during the end turn sequence, because that would be to my advantage. I can also bombard those local Hiroshima troops who may get involved in that sally battle. The guys over in Kawachi, led by Murdoch, can now start getting repaired. A huge cost, but it'll be good, as I said, to have them at full strength ready for any future battles. I can also repair more damage done to Setsu and Harima provinces by the now defeated Imperial navies. So in Mimasaka we can see that Swano half stack just sitting near the castle, not sure what it's doing. I guess it thought it'd be joining up with this main force, but the main force ran away. So I put together some troops to attack, but it turns out my artillery pieces, which were standing outside the castle, don't have enough movement points to join the main force moving over there. I find it quite strange that they could move only such a short distance, but anyway, I can leave them behind and that will allow me to initiate battle and bring them in as reinforcements, but the Swano stack falls back slightly. Now the main force without the artillery has plenty of movement points, as you can see, so it looks like I will be able to go and attack that half stack and then move back to rejoin my artillery before the other Swano stack can move over to attack me, meaning I'm not going to get attacked without my artillery by the enemy's main force, which is definitely what I want to avoid. So I initiate battle. The enemy has a powerful melee focused army, and this time, I don't have artillery to force them to move. In fact, I'm going to have to get very close to them before I can start killing them, and then they can countercharge me and perhaps catch me in melee. We'll see how I deal with this next time. That's all for now. I'll be building an invasion to rob the spirit from the remaining Imperial forces next time on Teppou Republic.